So Donald Trump is giving his State of the Union address tonight, and apparently many people are betting on it. And I mean literally betting on it. Look at the headline. The mentions market is what we call it. Mentions market tries to predict the unpredictable Trump's next words. Mention market explodes in popularity, but even traders complain that they are sometimes gamed by insiders. And of course they are. Basically what you're doing is you are betting on what Trump is going to say. So I guess if you want to bet on how many times does he say Biden or windmill or China or hottest country in the world, people bet on this stuff. And this is like showing you various things on that. And it says here, hunkered down in a dark room, Max Carrozza watched riveted as President Trump gave a speech on the U.S. economy. Hottest, come on. So you're cheering on for him to say hottest. Then it came, we're the hottest country in the world. Yeah, let's go. And I guess he made $64 on that. I was actually looking at this stuff. What will Trump say during the State of the Union? And I guess people put bets, and that's the numbers that people are betting: $20, $500, $100, whatever. But there's certainly going to be insider trading on this stuff because the speech is already written, so someone actually knows what it's going to be. And if you really want to bet on this stuff, you can bet, is he going to say fake news, ballroom inflation? It's so stupid. Who will Trump mention during the State of the Union? Will he mention Bessent, Putin, Witkoff, right? What will Trump say this week? I didn't know this was a thing. Will he talk about Epstein? Who are you with? Where are you from? Right, yeah, he does say that kind of stuff. Will he talk about crypto, Bitcoin, etc.? So that is what people are betting on. I really didn't know that was a thing. You could also talk about what people think about Trump recently, as essentially gotten a lot of polling data coming out. We asked 2,300 Americans about the best and worst things Trump has done. And is it closing the borders, stock market terrorists, Gestapo-style corruption, allies, depending on which side of the aisle that you ask, right? So this was pretty interesting. So this is from people who like Trump. The best things Trump has done according to his supporters. So his supporters are all about immigration, deportations, the border, right? So that's their top issue for people who like Trump. Economy is, boy, that's way down there after that, at 45%. So immigration is 79%. Economy is 45%. W, economy in general, tariffs, inflation, tax cuts, beautiful bill, 15%, cut spending the federal workers, 9%. Actually, that wasn't very popular among the supporters. Interesting. International peace deals, 8%. Healthcare policy changes, 6%. So that's his supporters. Here's some quotes here. Attempting to regain control of our borders and benefits of citizens. That's coming from West Virginia, Republican. Deporting alien criminals and people who entered America legally. Illinois man, 69, independent, he says. At least started working on illegal immigration issues, even if it has gone poorly. Hopefully he will adjust and find what works. That's someone age 56, independent. That's all older voters. Closing the border, deporting dangerous criminals here illegally. North Carolina, 55. Reduction of the fentanyl and drugs overall coming to USA. Kentucky man, age 51. This would be on the other side then. Worst things Trump has done according to his opponents. So we say immigration, deportations border, that's at 57%. Economy, so general tariffs, inflation, 33%. Corruption, violating the Constitution, politicizing the Justice Department. That's another top issue for people who don't like Trump. That's at 22%. Poor international relations, Epstein file, promoted racism, discrimination, mismanagement of federal agencies, increased military action. So these are the essentially a couple different ways to look at what people think of Trump. Here's some quotes on the other side then. Detaining and deporting immigrants with no criminal background. Okay, that's coming from Pennsylvania, age 59. So it looks like they talked to mostly older people in this thing. Gave ICE all the power they have. That's coming from Florida, 76 Democrat. His Gestapo style of deporting illegal immigrants, even killing at least 2 citizens. We are a nation of immigrants, coming from New York, age 88. Everything with ICE deporting immigrants. So a lot of people are talking about this stuff. Enriching himself and his business while deporting by doing nothing to help everyday Americans lower costs of daily food. Okay, utilities and insurance. So that's what people are saying. We actually have a preview of the State of the Union also. So I guess if you want to bet in this stuff, this is literally what it is. That's why I said there's certainly insider stuff going on with that. So I just treat it like gambling if you're in that stuff. I'm not into betting on what president's going to say. But I'm sure he'll talk about China, fake news. He'll probably mention Biden. Will he mention Obama? That'll be an interesting question, right? How far back will we go back? Will he mention Carter? Why not at this point? So Trump to sell the economy during the State of the Union address. So that's their plan. They're going to try to tell you you're all rich, basically. The president expected to argue that the country is strong, prosperous, and respected. So I guess we could go with opposite day here. So if that's what they're considering on saying, then that means we're weak, poor, and not respected. That's our 250th year. So then this is the full preview. He's going to sell the economy. Good luck with that. And unveil new measures meant to lower costs as Republicans try to address voter concerns ahead of midterm elections this fall. Lower costs. Okay. The address will emphasize the idea of American exceptionalism, and the president is planning to weave in stories of Americans who say they have benefit from his policies. Yeah, and we already know they started to do this. If you look at the White House social media, basically they showed letters from his supporters. So chances are they're not going to use any data because the data is all against the Trump people. So they'll just use like, oh, there's a person in, Ohio that loves me. Oh, there's a person in Georgia that loves me. That kind of stuff. I think that's what they're going to do. And then they're bringing in the hockey team also. So they're going to rely on anecdotes, not data. That would be my bet. The address to joint session of Congress will give the president a high-profile platform to tout his agenda. He's expected to tick through prominent policies, including tax cuts passed by Republicans, efforts to lower prescription drug prices. He is planning to call on Congress to pass legislation codifying the healthcare framework he released earlier this year. Okay. Which calls for redirecting federal subsidies from insurers to consumers. Okay. While Republicans praise the plan, they have so far shown little interest in taking it up during the midterm election year. So that's a non-starter then. He's going to try to, healthcare thing's a non-starter. What else does he have? The speech comes amid polling that shows voters dissatisfied with the economy and concerned about costs. Political strategists of both parties warned those frustrations could translate into Republican losses in November.
But talked about what is driving this drop for the president.
What is driving this drop? I said record was the name of the game when it came to this segment, right? Talking about the lowest Trump has ever been going into the State of the Union, the lowest that any president has been this century going into a State of the Union at this point in their presidency. It is also the weakest that Donald Trump has ever been with independents. Look at this drop. We've been talking about it the past few months. At this point, a year ago, Donald Trump was at minus 13 points. Look at this. Minus 47 points among independents, the lowest Donald Trump has ever been in either of his two terms as president with independents. That is driving these numbers. When you're 47 points underwater with independents, that's the name of the game. You can't be above water overall, and that's why Donald Trump is near record lows overall and the lowest he's ever been going into a State of the Union address.
Quite a message on the eve of this
Yes.
big moment. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
John?
Those numbers with independents just eye-popping there.
So here's the thing, though. You're dropping independents, right? People don't like Trump, but will that necessarily translate to people showing up at the polls and going blue, right? That's what we're waiting to see, because there's a distinction between not liking Trump and necessarily you're going to flip entirely. My personal opinion on this stuff, though, is I just think there'll be a lot of Republican voters that don't show up. And I think a lot of the Trump people, the hardcore MAGA that didn't participate in politics before, will just basically not participate ever again. I think that's probably how it's going to play out, because it's a lot of like low information voter type people that just usually aren't into this stuff or pay attention to any of these things. They like Trump's message of all the Trumpy stuff that he says, and then they realize, oh my God, Trump's a con artist, and they just check out of the system. So, I can't predict exact numbers of what it's going to be in the general, but that's just sort of my estimation of it. And then, yeah, any reasonable person out there, you can see he's sinking in the polls, absolutely. So now he's going to try to tell you how rich you all are. So here's one thing new that they're going to introduce, evidently. It has to do with data centers. It says among them, Trump will formally announce, quote, ratepayer protection pledges. Okay, ratepayer protection pledges. The administration negotiated with top tech companies that require tech companies to pay increased electricity costs in communities where new data centers are being built. Interesting. The president is expected to say that companies have made commitments to pay their own way so electricity prices don't spike for consumers. So this is a new thing that I hadn't heard of, that they were doing this. So they'll announce, again, data centers, and that theoretically tech companies are going to pay the increased electricity costs. Okay. Let's see here. Trump's longtime speechwriter Ross Worthington has led the drafting of the speech. So again, it's already there. The president, who typically eschews traditional speech prep, oh God, so he doesn't really like preparation, spent time over the weekend reviewing text and making his own edits. I'm sure he had that Sharpie out. But Trump often veers off script, even in formal address. His joint address to the Congress last year stretched over 90 minutes, so it's going to be long if you're going to watch it. I'll look at the highlights, and I'll catch the summary, and I'll share it with you guys. But yeah, it could be 2 hours. Who knows where this thing is, over 90 minutes. So apparently that's the new stuff. Not a lot in there, and then they'll just tell you how rich you all are. This probably won't come up. So if I were betting, I would not mention. We'll see. I mean, you never know with Trump. Democrats to probe DOJ's alleged withholding of Epstein files on Trump. So that's an interesting question. Would Trump bring up Epstein during the State of the Union address? I'm going to go with no on that one, but don't take that as betting advice. I'll say someone knows what he's going to say, but it is true he does go off script and to say all sorts of whacked out stuff, and I'm sure there'll be someone somewhere betting on whether or not he mentions Epstein. So that's my thoughts on this. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you on the next video.